Okay, welcome to the Halo Combat Evolved, actually Development Evolved. I'm one of the monks. I'm Marty O'Donnell. I wrote the music and worked on the sound design along with my partner Jay, who's in the audience. And we're going to talk about how Halo was developed and potentially something about Halo 2, but we'll have to see how that works out. My first thing I'd like to do is apologize to Ed Fries, who's in the audience. I don't know how that Apple logo got up on the screen. I apologize. I think Jay did it. You see, I'm going to be fired anyway, so there we go. I'd like to introduce the members of the panel today. This is Jaime Griesemer, who was level design on Halo 1, and he is now... Actually, let me just tell you something really quickly about Jamie. He blackmailed me several years ago to get him to be introduced to the guys at Bungie, and now he's lead designer on Halo 2. So for all you youngsters out there, blackmail works. Okay.
Secret microphones.
Oh, gosh, sorry about that. I should know better. And on my right is Matt Naguchi, who was a boy genius programmer on Halo 1 and did tools for us like crazy. And he is even more genius on Halo 2. He's giving us some incredible tools, and he's also the lead audio programmer of only one. There's only one, so he's the lead. And so what we're going to do today is talk a little bit about how we developed Halo from sort of three different approaches. We're all together as a team, representing design, programming, and audio. And on our far right is Hamilton Chu, who was the lead producer on Halo and is also lead producer on Halo 2. And today he's functioning as, I think it's Microsoft stooge, to keep us censored about anything about Halo 2. Okay, so without any further ado, Jaime Griesemer, you'll take it away.
Before we start, can I just see a quick show of hands? Who was at the talk that Chris Butcher and I gave last year about Halo's AI? Okay. So what we decided was we didn't want to come to GDC and be extremely generic and high-dollar secrets and send people away with no idea what we were really talking about and with no real idea of how they could use it. So we gave away the farm. We told every Halo AI secret that we could come up with and cram into an hour. We thought that was brilliant, and then we got home, and Microsoft and our superiors didn't think that was so brilliant. So this year, we're having to be a little bit more careful. So we had to run our presentation by some people. And I have to be really careful right now because I can see at least 5 people that can fire me and probably 2 that could have me killed. So we're going to be really careful. This is Halo Development Evolved.
Oh, good. There.
Not really a lot of secrets will be revealed. And we'll just get right to it. This is supposed to be a panel. This is probably the biggest audience for a panel I've ever seen. So we're going to try to get some Q&A sessions. There's mics in the aisleways, and once we get to the end of a section, we will take maybe 3 or 4 questions. So if you have a question during one of the sections, just come line up at the mic. Try to make it a good question, because you'll be wasting lots and lots of man hours if it isn't.
So we're hoping somehow every 15 minutes or so we'll take a little batch of questions on whatever we were just talking about. And then Hamilton will go like this.
So the kind of the 4 areas we're going to go through in explaining our process. Bungie does a lot of experimentation. We are all about communication. We owe pretty much everything to our tools, and we have a couple other secrets that we're going to talk about as well. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is experimentation. Bungie does a lot of concepting. We'll do character concepts, we'll do level concepts, we'll do gameplay concepts. We do much more concepting than what actually makes it into the game. Our process is extremely organic. That's one of the reasons why Halo took so long, was we were growing it very carefully, and you never know what moving too quickly can just kill the whole thing. So That's one of the reasons why we do lots and lots of concepts is to figure out quickly which direction we're going to go. This is another example of concepting. These are actually all for the same level. You can see they're wildly different. They're done by different concept artists, and we actually didn't use any of these. So it's okay. It's okay. This was some concept work that we did for the trailer, which is public, and therefore I cannot get in trouble for mentioning. You can see how once we decided on a concept, which we try to keep pretty pure a vision. We don't do a lot of like designing by committee. So we picked one of the concepts and pretty much took it through trying to keep it as similar as possible. We also do a lot of prototyping. The top 3 pictures here are from a thing we did on trying to destroy stuff. This was just a mock-up we did a really long time ago, just experimenting with some of the stuff that other groups had done so well. This was, I guess, in the lower left was like our Sims concept that we did. We do lots and lots of prototyping before we move on, and also once we're in production, we'll still continue to prototype and revise those prototypes. So, doesn't look like we've got anybody at either of the microphones. Does somebody want to jump up?
One thing I'd like to talk about a little bit on the prototyping side that's a lot of fun, if you know that there was, in the game, there was an awful lot of dialogue, what we called conditional dialogue, that was randomly generated. So during prototyping stage, we had basically placeholders to just see how the dialogue would work, and especially with the grunt. All we had done is taken some marine dialogue that we had as placeholder and pitched it up, and that became, I'm revealing something now, but it became so funny to hear the grunt speaking in English, saying, funny things, that we decided that needed to be the way the grunt was. And what I enjoy the most is seeing fans making really logical explanations of why this little alien creature has English slang. It's all about, translators and all sorts of wonderful things. It's really just because it was funnier that way. So.
Looks like we do have a question. Go ahead.
Thanks. Hi.
Hi.
I think originally Halo was going to be a third-person title, and then somewhere along the line it turned into a first-person Xbox title.
Mm-hmm.
Was Experimentation the reason that it was moved to a first-person title?
I think Experimentation is probably the reason that it was a third-person title in the first place. We were just trying to experiment with different things. I mean, it originally started out as a real-time strategy game, so you can see we went pretty far afield in our experimentations.
We actually have something that would be fun to show at some point, but not today, that goes all the way back to the initial experimental stages, and it shows it as Halo being a third person, or an RTS, moving into the third person, and then finally getting into the first person. I think one of the things I remember about experimenting with third person shooter was that it was just really hard to aim, and especially aim some of the vehicles, and we wanted to do it, and it just didn't seem quite as fun. So that's how we ended up that way.
Yeah,
I was going to say the other thing is because we got to get Matt in here talking too. Although Matt came in a little bit later, he started not when we were in Chicago, so he's not going to talk about the experimental early side. But the fun thing about Bungie to me is that somebody like me, who at the time was a contractor working with Bungie, is that they liked having the audio guy actually in there, even playing the game with the guys in the office and talking about audio and music right from the get-go. And for all you, well, that's true. But for all the designers out there and programmers, I think it pays off if you have a lot of people involved in experimentation and prototyping and everything else. You get different viewpoints from different people. And Matt over here is probably one of the best players in the office. Not the best, but one of the best.
Was there any other questions? Somebody wanted to jump up real quick before we move on? Okay. So the next thing that really makes Bungie, I think Bungie, and has helped our process a lot, is communication. Here you can see some pictures that we took of our office space. You can see it's very open. The walls of the cubicles are really low, so you can see what everybody's doing. Sometimes you can't see what they're doing. You get to know your neighbors pretty well. This is great for a lot of things. It allows for really easy collaboration. You can see when somebody's there. You can see when they're working on something you need to talk to them about. You can really quickly have an impromptu meeting about something. It's also great for inspiration. I think if you're working in a lot of offices, you maybe are really focused on your little territory, and you're not getting inspired by what everybody else is doing. Whereas I get to walk through the office and I look at something that Marcus, our art lead, is doing, and I just get inspired, and I say, hey, well, why don't we use that in this level, and why don't we try, combining it with this other gameplay idea, and that's kind of the cross-pollination idea as well, is that you are able to take different things from different disciplines and relate them quickly and in an open kind of way.
From a general workflow perspective, during crunch mode, it's also really helpful because whenever the tools crash, I hear someone scream and I know exactly where to go. If it's off to the right, it's probably an artist. Off to the left, it's a designer.
Tools crash? That happens?
I mean, when other people's code crashes.
This is some other pictures of our space, just showing all the concept art that we have. The one in the upper right are storyboards from cutscenes, generic cutscenes.
Generic.
The one in the lower right is our wall. It's got ideas for levels, concepts. We usually try to keep that updated pretty quickly so that somebody just walking through our office can learn all that they want and send it to some website. No, wait. We do that. We do that so that other people in the office get a feel for the game and how it's progressing. Our team's a lot bigger than it was when we first started. I think it's like 7 or 8 times bigger, and so this kind of passive communication is really important. And I actually pixelized the lower left because that ended up just being a bunch of like anatomically correct drawings of like stick figures and stuff that I didn't want you guys to see. We even go to the point of building physical prototypes of levels where, oh no, wait a second, that's the racetrack that we built for our little RC cars. This is Marty's space, so I'll let him talk about it.
One of the things that when Bungie asked if I could be a full-time employee of Bungie a couple of years ago and come inside the fold, which was exciting to me because I knew that we could build a studio on-site, and 10 days later we got bought by Microsoft, so we all ended up moving to Redmond, Washington. But we still got to build a studio right there, and this is my studio, which is right outside the door is everybody. So actually I have a double door that locks twice. It's very good, so I can be by myself. But I have a full range of synthesizers and keyboards. You can see down on the lower left and the upper right there is the glass into the isolation booth. So we bring the voice actors right into Bungie, and that's where we do it. And it's all professional Screen Actors Guild talent. And so Captain Keyes and Cortana and Sergeant Johnson and everybody are right there meeting the guys at Bungie. And what's fun is we can take the time to, not just be some outside studio someplace trying to explain what an interactive game is like. We can actually have the people there. They can see the artwork. They can see what they're trying to do and spend some time with us. And it really seems to help a lot. These are, actors actually really enjoy understanding what it is they're working on.
Yeah, I remember one time we brought in a Marine, I guess, and he was going to do some dialogue, and the reads that you were getting were too quiet, too...
It sounded like they were watching a tennis match. Nice shot. Hey, good job.
So Marty brought the voiceover actor out and had me play through the level in front of him and throw some grenades and show that this was a huge battle and we should be a little more excited about what was going on. It's also really nice... like I said, we do lots and lots of prototyping, so it's good to, when I have the first playable version of a level, I'll be able to go to Marty and say, hey, Marty, I need placeholder dialogue. And he can just go into the studio and we can record it right there and cut it up.
Right, and then at the same time, we're able to experiment right away with the tools, and we're making content and instantly putting it in the game, calling for Matt to come help us and fix the tools. And Maybe, Matt, you'd like to talk a little bit about some of the audio tools, or should we wait on that?
Let's wait.
We'll wait on that. Okay.
Tool section.
But we never pester any of the programmers.
No, of course not. I don't have to go over there 5 times a day just to make sure that Marty will shut up and stop asking me for features.
You're not percent better at all. So one of the other things that's really great about trying to foster this communication is that you get lots of input from your team. Usually that input's really good, and sometimes it's not so great. But these are actually the cream of the crop, because I actually wrote these down.
These are not made up.
For some reason, at some point, I thought that it'd be great for something to come together and form Voltron, and so I actually wrote it down. I think I got this thing about grunts learning English by watching I Love Lucy from our forums. I think I steal all the time from the fans. So if you're a fan, just go right on the forums, and I'm sure somebody will read it, and we'll steal it from you. Exploding harpoons, always good. And then this was a mission objective that actually got brought up in one of our brainstorm meetings, where we decided we were going to have the objective be to completely block a canyon with crash tanks. Kind of go that way. When we're collaborating, a lot of times we'll have 2-person teams. This isn't something that we intentionally did. It just seems to work out that way. So our mission designers aren't artists. So we have a mission designer and a mission artist, and they work together really, really closely to build a level. The same goes with the tool designer, which is Tyson Green, actually, he's in the front row, and the tool programmer. They work together constantly with pretty minimal supervision on what they're responsible for. So one thing we wanted to show you guys was an example of how a mission designer, which was, in this case, me on Halo 1, and the Marty, work together to do some interactive music.
Move over to that, if I can get this. Getting there. Okay, what I'm going to show in just a second this is a gameplay, and if any of you have played Halo, which I'm assuming many of you have, you've probably played through this level. It's the first level, it's the tutorial level, and what we call the tutorial. And one of the things we wanted to do, what I wanted to make sure was happening right from the beginning of thinking about making Halo a really fun game to play was, I didn't want anything to be, when it came to audio and music, to be programmatic in the sense that a programmer told me something. Actually, no, what I mean is that a programmer would say, now there's combat, so play combat music. Now it's walking around, play walking around music. I wanted to take a much more cinematic approach, because that's my background. I wanted to see music that would be spotted, like a director would work with a composer and say, in this scene, I'd like to convey this emotion. I'd like to, take the audience from here to here. And I felt, looking at Halo, it's the only difference between Halo and a movie, of course, is that it's all interactive. And so the player is determining all the timing, and they're basically making up their own experience. But I was really hoping to get the music to make it feel like it's scoring what's happening as though I was scoring it after seeing what the player did. So in this very beginning part, it's just after you sort of learn how to move around. Jamie wanted you to all feel like you think you're going to learn how to do other things, but instead, all hell breaks loose and the ship is being destroyed and you have to go someplace and you have no weapons, so you should start to feel some tension. So what I did was I brought in some music, which we can trigger at any point we want, because there's so many scripted moments in the game. So I could tie a piece of music into any scripted event that Jamie already had or the level designer already had. So in this case, there was an explosion. The music starts there. As the music continues to play, there's a moment, if you finally get there, where a door opens and there's a big bad alien, which is going to be a little bit dark, I'm afraid, on these screens, but you'll hear a string stinger, I call it, that will sort of, hopefully make you feel like that's a scary thing. And then when you get to a point where you understand you need to keep moving and the tension is up a little bit, you'll start to hear some vocals come in over the top. My goal is to never have the audience or the players aware of what's happening. My goal is to manipulate people without them being aware that they're being manipulated. And I think it's the same with the level designers too. I mean, they want you to have a really great experience, but you feel in control. But you don't know necessarily when the dialogue is a scripted dialogue to help you do something, or maybe it's random dialogue. So what you'll hear here is the music moving. It gets, all these different points. It gets to the point where you accomplish what you need to accomplish, and then it fades out. And at that point, we move into just ambience. So one of the other keys is that for the most part in Halo, there is no music playing while you play. It's ambience and sound effects. And you'll also hear some of the dialogue that happens. If you were to play through this level again, many of these pieces of dialogue will be entirely different. So, without further ado, let's try it.
This way!
He was supposed to help you. Going well. One of the things I also want you to see on that, and it was always a goal for me from the beginning, was to make all the transitions as seamless as possible. The idea of being able to have cutscenes in the middle of gameplay, the fact that we did everything in real time helped us to keep all the assets as seamless as possible, so the gameplay audio just flows right into the audio of the cutscene. And that's something that Matt could probably explain a little bit in terms of the scripting and the tools and stuff like that.
How they all integrate together?
Yes.
Are we going to show the tools?
I wanted to take some questions first.
Okay. Well, for the cinematics, we had a custom design tool by me.
Yay!
That was integrated into the level editor so that our cinematics designer, Joe Staten, could go in and say, all right, I want to create a cutscene that's about, say, 10 to 15 seconds long of Master Chief kicking a rock into the shaft. And so he would set up camera points, set up the animations to play, and be able to run that particular cutscene in that editor so he could look at it and tweak it as it's running.
Just to bring things full circle, I actually remember when we were scripting that scene, Marty was actually standing over my shoulder. We were playing through it, and he would say, oh, it would be great to have a piece of music here. And I'd say, oh, well, I have a trigger that's set up to do something else. We can put it right there. And then I would create the trigger. Marty would then put in the music later. So it was something that we were doing very closely working together, which I think you have to kind of have that culture of communication in order to do. Anybody got questions on Bungie's kind of communication or spaces? Yeah.
If you guys could go over to the microphones in the aisles, it would help us out a lot. And what I was going to just say, as long as people are coming up there, is the communication with the level designers. Each level had a level designer, obviously, and for me to be able to sit with each guy, watch them play through the level, take notes like I was working with the director, and knowing that we could script music and sound and Foley and all those things on top of what was already there in really creative ways, and even mix it by using the tools. Was really cool. It was what I've always wanted to be able to do, and it was great.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could go into more detail on how the mission designer and the mission artist, like what the workflow was there, in terms of like, did you have more of one than the other, and how'd the workflow go?
Just to get into some dangerous territory, our process has actually improved a lot in Halo 2, so I'm going to describe Halo 2's process.
Okay.
We have
Hamilton, is that okay?
Really quick descriptions of our missions. Oh, we have missions. Sorry. And then what the level designer will do is kind of write up a brief description of some of the things he wants to happen. And that's as far as we'll go before we start talking to an artist. And at that point, the artist and the level designer will kind of sit down, decide scope. The artist will start working on concept art while the mission designer starts describing encounters more fully. Then we'll come back together. We get to a stage that we call the previs stage, which is essentially, you can walk through the whole level, but it's not a lot of detail. It's just big blocky rooms. And then we'll start going through and passes to refine that previs until it's pretty solid. We do all that because it's really hard to edit final geometry, but it's really easy to edit previous geometry. So then at some point they'll diverge, and the mission designer will start placing encounters on the geometry, and the artist will start rezzing it up a little bit and texturing it and stuff.
So the mission designer like still is in the tools, touching things?
Oh yeah. Our mission designers, they don't build the environments, but we still have a lot of scripting and population that needs to be done.
And do you have like a 1-to-1 ratio for those, like pretty much the same number of both, or is it?
It's actually, it takes a little longer to build the levels than to design them, so we have probably not quite twice as many artists as designers.
Cool, thanks.
Mm-hmm. Did you have a question?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure there's no one over there. I know that no one's over there, right? I can't really see the camera.
I can't see either.
Okay, well, I guess not. I know myself and probably a lot of other people here aren't fortunate enough to have the same office dynamic as you guys with the low cubicles or even an office for that matter. Would you have any suggestions to try to recreate that dynamic in an online setting or a teleconferencing setting?
Right. Well, I've seen people take sledgehammers to their office walls. We actually did that at one point.
In Chicago.
Yeah, if you're online, wow, about the only thing you can do is work really hard to communicate. Just schedule time. I've got a couple recurring appointments in Outlook that just remind me to go talk to people if I haven't talked to them in a few days or even a few hours sometimes. I think also if you're going to be online, you're going to have a really small team. You're not going to be able to get above like 3 or 4 people working on a single thing.
Exactly.
The right level of communication.
All right. Do you guys have any other?
Oh, I was just going to say that when I was a freelancer and I worked on some other games, I worked on like Ribbon, the sequel to Myst, and those guys were in Spokane and I was in Chicago, and I'm sure a lot of you guys have worked like this at times, and I think it's really difficult. The one thing I learned on that was how important it was to physically be around. And I feel for people who are putting online communities together to make games. I think it's really good. I'm not sure how well you can do it if you're doing a mod. I think it makes more sense to me. But I tell you, when you're building something from scratch and not using third-party tools, having all custom built tools, it's just invaluable to be able to walk over to Matt and tweak the right. And just tweak the smallest little detail and say, hey, this would really work better if the menu worked this way, or if this thing came up this way, and boom, 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 he changes it, checks it in, and then we have it.
filtered a lot on who asks me. If a programmer asks me to change something, I usually ignore them because 90% of the time they won't be using the tools. But someone like Jamie or Marty or one of the artists comes by and says, hey Matt, I keep hitting Control-Alt-X instead of Control-Alt-V, and that causes it to wipe out everything on the disk. then you kind of say, oh yeah, I should go fix that. So.
The physical proximity thing is really important on a small scale, and it's also important on a big scale. That's the main reason, besides the massive amount of money hats that we got, that we moved from Chicago to Redmond.
We're all driving Ferraris, by the way. You probably knew that already.
Was to be actually physically closer to the guys working on the hardware.
Joking.
And the guys working on the other launch titles.
Okay, so get an office and ignore the programmers. That's what I should get from that.
Yes,
Both good advice.
And actually, the lucky thing for us, although it was part of like what we wanted to make sure was happening, is Bungie always had an open plan. And when Microsoft bought us, luckily they hadn't moved into the buildings that the Xbox was going to move into, and so there was a unbuilt space. And so the space we got, we could say exactly how we wanted it to look to a point. But Microsoft tends to like to build offices for their people, and we absolutely said, no, please give us, just blow all the walls, don't put any walls in, and we want really low cubicles. And there are artists that don't really like that. They put, foam core up around, and they try to protect themselves. But we pretty much, I think we like it better when we can see what everybody's doing.
How about one more question?
I'm sorry, I actually thought of one more thing about the same topic. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was curious how you handled source control, like after they diverged and you had, an artist and a designer working on the same material.
Actually, we'll get into that a little bit in our tools, but the short answer is we have this data-driven kind of structure that allows us to keep things separate so that the environment artists can be working on the max model and we can be working on the encounters, and they don't step on each other's toes.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
Anybody else?
Okay. Let's move on to the custom tools. So the first tool we want to show you is Gorilla.
Are we allowed to say Gorilla?
Well, that's not actually how
Yes.
we spell it, but yes.
Oh, okay.
They didn't censor us. Did you want to describe what's cool about Gorilla?
Okay, just in general, I wanted to talk a little bit of the philosophy behind the tools. It's two parts. One, tools should do as much as possible, and the second one is tools should only do what they need to do. Those two sound conflicting, but you can ignore that because it's not really important. It's just because we can't log on to SourceSafe because this isn't connected to anything. What that means is Gorilla is our basically raw game asset editing tool. We have the ability to create and update game types that we want to save out to disk, like how objects work, models, levels, the level geometry. And all that is described completely in code. We could also describe it offline in some text-based or other binary format. But because the way it's set up, we have every data type is described by fields, and there's a specific editor for each kind of field. So as you can see here, Jamie's working on the reference field. This lets tags basically say, I need to use, for a model tag, I need to use this bitmap to wrap around my head, or I need to use this sound whenever I hit something. This lets us create new data types whenever we need to without creating an actual custom dialogue for each particular type. It also lets us define custom fields for specific types. This is the bitmap view. It has a little button that says show bitmap that lets us bring up the bitmap and say, oh, this is how it's going to look in the game. We can look at it, the alpha channel, different bitmaps, stuff like that. We also have a specific dialogue for the sound. So if Marty wants to go in and hear how the sound actually got translated from the raw source file to our in-game format.
And we call this the Uber tag for the conditional dialogue. So the first tag shows all the AI states that could be happening, of which there are 153. Thank you, Jay. And each 153 individual AI states has multiple permutations. So
That's
we're
how
opening
you
up
do
the
it,
one.
boys!
Let's hear that one again. Or
And
that
my
one.
mom thought I was going to be a doctor.
So for this one, this is our Sarge killing people, and he's killed an enemy, and he has one of 13 things he can...
I'd have been your daddy, but that dog beat me over the fence.
So has anybody heard that in the game yet? Because it's in there. So you should go back and play it until you hear that.
Right now.
That's what the reference is on beginning of Assault on the Control Room. It's I would have been your daddy, and that's the rest of the line.
Yeah, he made that. That was one of the things we also really enjoy working with actors. We actually tell him, this is the condition you're in. We want you to say these 5 things or these 6 things that we've written out. And if you have a good actor, then they just start going off. And this guy goes off like crazy. His name's Pete Stacker, and he, as you can see, we have just...
Yeah, that's how you do it, boys.
Yeah, so we have... How many things do we have here?
14.
At least 18 that he did.
Yeah, we chose the 14 that we liked. And that's just
Wasted!
from one. That's just from one of the conditional 153 states that he might be able to respond in. Just one of the 6 Marines. So I think we had. Okay, tell me how many lines of dialogue we had. 6,700, 7,000, something like that. And what's nice is that we never know what they're going to say. So you throw all these little characters out there, you run around, and it's just fun because we don't know what they're going to say. We know what they might say, but you get some really great conversations happening from the AI.
The thing from a design side that's great about this tool is I want to change how fast the rocket launcher goes. I just go in, I do it in data, check it back into source safe. I don't have to worry about getting another build or worse yet, getting a programmer to go in and change numbers. It's also great because the tool allows the programmers to put in help text, so you don't have to be a master of all this arcane knowledge because all of the comments and stuff that you need are right there in the tool.
Another feature of this tool that we can't really demonstrate is we have direct integration with our source control solution. So instead of having to have separate applications open in order to actually edit anything, you can do it all inside this tool, which is great for the artists because they don't want to be, they just want 1 or 2 things open and the rest they don't really want to care about.
And the other thing I'd like to just mention is that when you're talking about audio people and artists, you're talking about people who, they're not programmers. I'm not a programmer. I took some programming once, but I didn't want to be a programmer. And the tools that we have, really, they're making them more and more friendly to the artists. And I think that's a huge advantage. You don't want to turn artists at all into programmers, but you certainly want to give them the tools so they can create something cool and that they feel like they're in control because they will do something cooler than probably programmers will. Hopefully.
The next tool I wanted to just briefly touch on is the tool we used for editing our scripts. It's actually available on the internet. We got it. We paid the shareware fees. I don't even know if this guy knows that we're using his tool.
Oh, great.
It's all legal.
Okay.
But I guess this is just here to show if there's already a tool that does what you need, don't waste programmer time making your own. Yeah. The final tool is Sapien. This is what most of the level designers use on a daily basis.
Hopefully it's not crashed.
Hopefully. So this is the game window, and usually it displays an actual rendering of thing in the game.
Thing. Sometimes what we call this is we call it WAC, which stands for WAC, weak something code. Okay, weak something code. I can't remember what it is.
Hey, now I wrote this in 2 months.
All right.
So normally in the game window, when it's displaying properly, you see all the stuff that's in the level. You can go in and place new units, work through the AI, which is some of you might recognize, like the encounters and firing point stuff from a previous talk. This is a really great tool. It's not used to being projected, but I think that's forgivable. Anything else you want to say about Sapien?
This tool is basically your one-shot stop to doing anything in the game that you want to actually happen in the game. We use this tool to edit the cinematics, the AI, This particular version also lets you look at your models, and yeah, that's not going to work. Add detail objects to the environment. That's stuff like grass.
Maybe Microsoft did this. I think that's probably what that is.
So, I mean, basically, this is the tool that you use when you want the visual way of editing levels. Because you can also edit the levels in Gorilla, but that means requiring to know exactly where to, the numeric values of where to put the firing points, the scenery, the rocks, the vehicles that you want placed just right. It also lets you, well, we would be able to show this, but basically run the game inside that little window that isn't showing anything. So you can test out, whether an encounter is going to be fun, if a cinematic actually looks good, if you need to move the camera 2 degrees to the left to get a better shot, things like that.
Yeah, and even the audio guys get to use this tool because we're placing environmental sounds all over the map and reverb types. Thank you, Jay. So we can describe in this area, it's a large cave. It should sound like a large cave, and this is running water, and this is a waterfall, and all those things. So we're using this tool all the time also. And luckily they've made it so, there was a point with a tool like this a few years ago where I got my hands on it, and I was just trying to place like bird sounds, and I accidentally deleted a fence post, and I crashed one of our games for like 2 days. So they have now sort of Marty-proofed this engine so that I can only place things. I can't actually delete anything important.
This is actually just a picture I took earlier that has the game window running, so you can see it actually does bring to the whole game. Not all the shaders work and stuff, but it's enough to get by. Anybody have a quick question or two about the tools? Yeah.
Yeah. So if the level artist makes the model in Max, what happens if he changes the geometry and then all the population, which was done as Sapien, no longer sticks to the floor or to the wall? How do you handle that?
We don't do that.
Remember what I was talking about before about prototyping? Fortunately, prototyping means you throw away a lot of work. And it's definitely the case that a hallway will move, which will move a subsequent section, and all the encounters that you did, all the firing points have to be replaced. Luckily, this tool is really quick, so we can set up encounters in just an hour or so. So it's not too much time wasted.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any thoughts or comments on writing your own custom tools or extending something like Maya with plugins as a way of editing your game world?
From my personal perspective, I like the idea of having a separate tool that you don't need to have this giant package to run. It lets me, create custom tools for our designers or artists. It lets me go in and fix things really quickly. I don't have to worry about a third-party architecture determining how we're going to design our engine. Also, because we're fortunate enough to have a single programmer dedicated to tools, we have a consistent user interface across all of them. We have one person that you go to if you want a new tool in there, and we have one person that just makes all this stuff work together, as opposed to other teams that I have heard of that anyone can write tools, anyone can plug them into anywhere, and you end up with a giant mishmash of code that in theory works great together, but in reality tends to crash your machine more often than not. So in general, plugins are great if you don't have the time to spend on tools, but if you have the time to spend on tools, it's a lot easier to make them in-house.
Also, Gorilla is actually an extension of a program that's been around since Bungie's very first game. Just getting, occasionally rewritten, but the concept's the same as it's evolved. So I think you can save a lot of expense by reusing tools if you kind of have a similar design philosophy between your games. Okay, let's move on. I just want to touch on a few other secrets. One of the things that's not really a secret is that Bungie likes to do its multiplayer games first. One of the great things about doing that is you can experiment with lots and lots of different types of game situations, and you don't have to write AI to make it fun because your AI is other players. So you can kind of figure out what it's most fun to do in your world, and then write game systems that specifically support that. It's also a source of inspiration crazy things happen in multiplayer that you're not really expecting, and you never would have spec'd out in a system that you try to do before you'd ever gotten your feet wet. So lots of stuff that happens in Halo probably is scripted that way because it happened in some crazy multiplayer game. And it also makes development a lot more fun.
Yeah, I would second that. It's fun to have, to actually be there. Jay and I are playing multiplayer games all the time with the guys for research purposes. We're not wasting time. But it actually helps us in terms of sound design especially. You know, we can really hear in context what footsteps are doing. You know, are they helping you know something important? Is the rocket sound whizzing by your head helping something? You know, how is everything really meshing together? We're not making sounds from somebody's list and then throwing them back over the wall. And we enjoy playing games. That's why I think we work in the games industry. And for me, it helps then get to that point where we're scoring the cinematics and scoring the individual game itself, that we've actually spent some time playing the multiplayer game, and we have a real feel for what the game is like.
Another secret that is definitely not a secret because we've been shouting it from the mountaintops for the last couple years is playtests. If you are not doing playtests and you're developing a game, you should absolutely be doing playtests. I think most game developers are. If you are doing playtests, you should be doing more playtests. If you're doing a ton of playtests, you should be doing playtests earlier in your development cycle. We've already done playtests on Halo 2.
Those people are dead right now. But.
Right. Never accept an invitation to an early Bungie playtest. And the most important thing about playtests is go to the playtests and watch the people playing your game. There's nothing as motivating as going to a playtest and watching people beg to stop playing your game because they've died 3 times during the tutorial. That's just nothing will motivate your designers to work harder than seeing how much people hate them for what they've done. I was going to give an example of something we learned from playtests, but I think we'll just skip it and go right to questions. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Who on your team is responsible for organizing the playtest sessions and bringing in outside people? Is that a full-time position?
Microsoft actually has a really extensive usability and playtest department. So they handle, databasing the names, and they've got their own labs, and they bring people in. And basically, all we have to do is say, "Hey, it'd be really great to have a playtest in a couple weeks," and they say, "Well, we'll get right on it."
So all of the internal playtesting is just in your own team? You don't bring up outside people in at all?
The usability and test departments have a giant list of people in the Seattle area to bring in. So we
and they're normal people. I mean, they're not other gamers or game designers or anything. It's fun to watch them play, or painful.
You get a pretty skewed opinion of your game if you only watch team members playing it.
Extremely.
I have a multiplayer related question. Were you guys surprised that people found a way to play multiplayer Halo on the internet? And it's a kind of a sidebar. Are you also helping out with the conversion of internet play to the PC version of Halo when it comes out?
I'm not really surprised that our fans came up with some ingenious way to do virtually anything. They just pound on the game and come up with all kinds of crazy solutions to everything. And I think it's great that people are playing. It's probably not the best experience, but it's still pretty cool that they're playing.
A couple of the devs on our team actually knew that this was possible. We just hadn't bothered coding up a solution that could be released because we figured someone else would do it, and about 2 other people, or 2 groups did. So, 11 hours. Yeah, 11 hours of Halo playing. All of a sudden they say, "Hey, let's play this over the internet." Okay.
And then the second part of the question, I think I'll probably just let somebody from Gearbox answer that question. we are helping them out though.
How much of your time do you spend playing your own game or other games? Well, just your own game. And does that change through the development process?
So that clip that Marty ran through, I probably could have. I probably could run through that entire level blindfolded and deaf. I played that level a billion times in every iteration. After release, I played it for a little while, and then I just couldn't play it for a few months. But now actually I go back. I've been playing it co-op quite a bit.
How about the multiplayer early on that you were referring to?
Oh yeah, we play lots of multiplayer. We've got a lab set up where there's just multiplayer running all the time, and
Lab. We call it the living room simulator.
right. And it's rare that there's not somebody playing after work, let alone during work.
Thanks for the game.
Since Halo went through a lot of different versions, third person, first person, was there a time when you kind of said, let's lock all of these designs, let's not change this anymore, and like how much of the older stuff did you use, and was there like, okay, we're going to stop this design, and now we're going to do just this first person shooter, and these are the elements that we're going to do, and does it keep on being an iterative process to the very end with design issues, or do you like kind of say, okay, this is it?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, some of the things get locked down pretty early. Like we had to decide, what kind of first person or third person we were going to do. We decided that even before we moved to Redmond. Some of the things like the camera's height and the character speed, also you have to nail down pretty early. But other things like certain aspects of the AI or rate of fire on the weapons changed all the way up to the last minute.
I'm sorry. One last thing is, before you released the game, did you know that it was going to be like a big hit? I mean, was there indications or within you or like signs that you thought, oh, this is going to be special, this is going to be a million seller, or?
Right before we shipped, the thing that concerned me the most was we had this great multiplayer game, and we would have numerous 8-on-8 games in the office, and my only concern was, people would not be able to play this great aspect of the game because not everyone would have a LAN, or not everyone would have a bunch of people to play with, and it turns out that those fears were largely unfounded because people took the time and effort to say, hey, how do I set up a LAN game, or hey, you guys, come over to my house because I got Halo. And they say, oh, you got Halo? Cool. So it was kind of scary right before we shipped, but then after about 3 months, kind of said, oh.
I would say that when we first, back in 1999, when we were working on some of the earlier prototypes and versions of it, what I think is kind of amazing that even with all the iterations that in 1999 we'd made a gameplay video. It was not a video, it was a gameplay demo. It was running on OpenGL, it was at Macworld, and Steve Jobs came out and the whole thing. And what's neat about that is that Halo today, in a large respect, is basically what you saw in that movie. I mean, that's our vision. It was a vision of the vehicle and the Master Chief and the aliens and driving around and having a lot of fun, and the music playing and making you feel cool, and at that moment we saw the audience reaction, and we realized people wanted to play that. They wanted to feel like what they saw, and I think we held on to that vision all the way through. And obviously, one of the indications that it might be a hit was that Microsoft decided to buy us. So we figured, well, maybe they know something. So the scary part for me was how much we ripped out and started over. Our lead programmer, Jason Jones, when he saw what we could do on the Xbox, he decided that it was time to rebuild the graphic engine and pretty much start from scratch. And it's amazing that we were able to, keep that vision through there and do what happened.
I actually first saw Halo maybe '98. That was kind of the tail end of the blackmail story. I did not work for Bungie. I was just some goofus college guy. Got to come in and see it, and then I knew it was like a palm tree and a grenade that shot these like smoke bombs and a little watercraft. And right then I knew this game was going to be huge. I'm kind of the office cheerleader. I'm always saying how this is the greatest level ever, the coolest weapon ever. But I really mean it. There was another time I was working on a level, and it was like 3 in the morning, and I'm driving in my Warthog, and I've got a gunner, and he shoots down a Banshee, and it like crashes into a wall and explodes, and then it like falls on me. And at that point, I was pretty sure Halo was going to be something special.
We've got about 5 more minutes, so let's get to the questions. Who's next?
I got a nasty question and a nice one. Why do you go for the strange control system when controlling the vehicles, where you move the point of view and then the steering kind of follows it? Because it's very unintuitive at first, I found.
So on the PC, turns out that control scheme works really well. People understand it. It's really intuitive. When we moved over to the Xbox, we had so many control issues that one just kind of moved off the end of the plate.
If you're really good, it's not that much of a problem.
Yeah.
And a nice question is, what's your single favourite little touch or moment in the whole game? Your absolute favourite bit?
Well, I'll tell you mine first. It's there's a snow level at night. You've just gone through a whole bunch of battles and killing the hunters and all this stuff, and you finally get to this one banshee and you fly up. And when I finally got it home and I was playing it, and of course, I mean, I'd worked on it. So, but here I was playing it, and I got into the banshee and I started flying away from these bad guys, and this big string music thing came in out of nowhere. I completely forgot about it, and I got chills up and down my spine, and that was my favorite moment, was actually playing it and actually, getting an emotional reaction from something I had worked on.
We're a modest group, as you can tell.
Yeah, but I mean, there are times when you sort of suddenly you're outside the work thing and you have a thrill. How about you guys?
My favorite moment was, or just favorite thing to do in Halo, is to get like 16 people together and play Rockets Race on Blood Gulch with rockets. Because, I mean, you basically take the two coolest parts of Halo, the rocket launcher and the Warthog, and add explosions, and you get some of the most insane insane moments where you have...
And there's no string music there.
Yeah, I mean, you got like two Warthogs driving at each other. There's a third guy standing right out there. He launches a rocket, and they both explode, and they both do backflips in the air. I mean, it's stuff that movies are made from. Literally.
I think my favorite moment, it comes at the beginning of Silent Cartographer. You land in your dropship, you jump out with like 9 other Marines and charge up the beach, and you're blowing guys up, and then right there's this moment of pretty intense combat, and then everybody is dead, and it's very quiet. I think that's my favorite moment. Of course, then the dropship voice actor comes in and spoils it. But I think that's my favorite moment.
No, don't say that.
I forgot which side we're on. That one has more people.
I was just curious, what other games inspire you?
Boy.
I'm a Zelda fan. Metroid Prime was, incredibly cool. So Matt doesn't agree with me. Sorry about that. I shouldn't have said that.
I think
we're game fans.
I think I learned something from every single game. I probably learn more from bad games than I do from good games, but there's certain... Nintendo's great. Sorry, Ed. Nintendo's great.
Buy them.
Most of the... we are going to get fired.
It's a joke.
I tend to like games that are really... They're trying something new. Rygar was probably the last game that I really got into, and it was just... You're this guy with this crazy weapon that's just whipping all over the place.
The games that inspire me are the blockbusters that I hate. Because reviewers give them these high scores.
Oh, it looks like we're almost out of time. How about one more question from over there?
Yeah, Jamie's the cheerleader. Matt's not the cheerleader. Go ahead.
With such an organic development process, I'm sure you guys came across some opinion clashes. Did you add a special team structure to keep division tight and make sure the decision pipeline was clean?
Could you phrase your question in a different way?
Just the fact that, you start from an RTS, you start from game into third person and to first person. I'm sure some people had some opinions on where the game should go. Right. And did you need a special, closed-door meetings or something like that to make sure the game was going forward?
Yeah, I just want to give credit to Jason Jones once again. I mean, he really is. I mean, no matter how many people we have on the team, there's one guy who's really the vision keeper, and he is the lead designer, programmer. He's an incredible idea guy and writer, and he takes information in from everybody. He's always at every brainstorming session, and he's in there playing until 2 in the morning like everybody else. And you know, he's like sort of like the president of the United States. You know, there's a cabinet maybe, and everybody has their opinion, but when he makes a decision, that's pretty much, you know, what we want to do.
Yeah, Jones will hate to hear that his name was bandied about, but yeah, it's definitely he leads, and we all fall in line.
It takes a lot of trust, and Jason has the experience and the titles to back that up. So
I think we're gonna break. Before we go, there's one more secret, and that's you gotta learn to generate hype. And Halo achieved a new personal goal of mine, which was at one point during the Beltway Sniper, we got Stone Phillips to rip us and blame us for the Beltway Sniper. So that's the last secret that we're going to reveal today. Thanks a lot for coming.
Anybody who had questions, come on up and we'll hang for a bit. Thank you very much.